Okay, hi everybody. We are continuing turn 2. As you can see, those 2 units marked with the red dots are the last activated formation on each side. So as it is now the Allied turn to activate, I will not be able to activate these guys here because somebody else has to activate first, or a pass has to occur. So, not being in any rush to activate those, it would be good if we could get this BW core activated. Unfortunately, looks like the leader's name is Offerman. Hopefully you can see that. And he's only got an activation number of 7, not the greatest. So he's going to try to roll to activate. Go over to the dice cup here, and let's see what we can get. And he did activate. So he will be moving. Yeah, let's check and see what his orders are. This may not have been the best thing to pick. As you can see, he's in no orders status. So he can't select his own order. So it might have been the wrong thing to do. So with no order status, each stack, if they want to move someplace, will have to roll individually to see what they can do. So, not the smartest move on my part to do that. So if we take this back, we would probably activate Wellington, who's in range, to Offerman and say, hey, Offerman, you need an order. Okay? So let's re-roll the die for Wellington. Take a mulligan on that decision. And now Wellington, he's got an upset tummy, but he was still able to activate. So we will activate him to give an order to Kellerman. So that's his activation. That's the end of the activation phase for those guys. So what they can do, I think we can go ahead and place this order now. So that's the C division. Who were those guys, actually? Oh, it's the brown colored one. Right, there they are, the BW division. So they need to head over as a backup. You can see a good place will be the tip of this area. Not very far to go. All right, so now we roll for the end of the turn. End of the turn die roll. Oops. An 8. Nope. So it now will be the French activation. So we will move this dot over to Wellington. Wellington cannot activate twice in a row this time. Okay, now we know where those guys are going. They're heading to this tip, this sort of hillock here. These elevation changes are very mild unless there's a slope. So they actually don't block line of sight unless there is a slope. All right, at least that's my understanding. All right, now going over here then. Once again, the French will select Kellerman. See if Kellerman can stir himself up and activate. Should be able to. He's got a 9 rating. And he barely does it. Yes, folks. Okay. So we'll come back to this. I'll do the moves, and we'll film it after that to show where they end up in their attacks and resolve that. Okay, so we've made the moves. We've got 2 prepared attacks, one on this flank at 2-1. They're prepared because they spent half their movement points not adjacent to it. At least one of the units did. And over here, the same. This is prepared, and Kellerman's going to help out with that attack. All right, I've set up some defensive positions here in case the cavalry attacks fail. So these are basically the attacks. Let's compute the odds. We'll do this one first on the flank right here. You see these guys. So there's the 2-to-1. The 9 factor guy will be going in first. All right, but they have light troops firing upslope. So the defensive fire is next. The light troops will fire. And they get light infantry unit firing for a -1, and that's the only change. But there is the slope, and since we have a slope there, the slope on fire is a +1, so it's an even attack. On the fire table, you can see I need basically a 5 or less to do something. Here's the roll. Oh, get the British dice. And they roll a 7, so there's no effect on that attack. Then over here, Kellerman's coming in, and the artillery will be doing the defensive fire. I believe they have a better chance, so he should always use artillery. That means the infantry doesn't add anything. So the artilleries, here we go. Die roll modifiers, adjacent target -1. There's not 10 SP. It is clear terrain, but that's not a defense order. It's cavalry. So they're firing in here. Artillery fire at -1 is likely to do something. So let's just see what happens here. So the horse artillery. It is the CRA Belgian unit, whatever that means. And they only rolled an 8. Okay, well, an 8 is actually nothing. So, no effects. We flip the table over now to do the melees. I did forget to indicate them. There's a melee going in this way. It's interesting doing this without a tripod. You start using your left hand for more stuff than it normally gets used for. There's the other melee. Not that way, but it's going in there. Okay. So the first one is a 2-to-1. Downslope. Does that affect melee? Slopes. Not a slope hex, but a slope. Only attackers at a lower elevation are affected. So, no effect for that. The quality difference is a 9 - 8, so that's a -1. And with a 2-to-1, it's another -2, so it's a net -3 on this attack. Here we go. -3 to whatever this is. Oh, it's a good roll. With a 3, we get a QFT1 plus reduced. So R means all units in the hex are reduced. But the QFT is actually taken first. It's a QFT1. So it's a base 8 reduced to a 7 because it's a QFT1, effectively a 7. Ooh, and they rolled an 11. Well, that fails by more than 2. So they are routed, and they will be flipped. They'll have to retreat. The initial route move, I believe, is 3 hexes towards that. Let's go back up. You see the red plus here is the supply area, so that effectively means they're going to go 1, 2, 3 there, and mark them with a routed marker. Okay. Well, Kellerman, finally getting into the action, has finally done something. So, now we have pursuit. We have a difference between may pursuit and must pursuit. So we have to find that pursuit table. There's a pursuit table in the rule book. So let me go find that. right? Here's the pursuit table. So it's 1815, so if they roll, if they fail this, they must perform a pursue melee. It's a 7, they don't, so they may perform a pursuit melee. So they can advance in, and they can do a pursuit melee, but it will no longer be prepared, as pursuit is never prepared. Okay, they don't get to avoid that -2. I don't believe. Okay. Now let's see if there's any defensive fire to this. Don't think so. Let me double check these rules here. Right, the prepared rules always say that you are never prepared, and that they do get defensive fire. So that's a regular unit getting defensive fire as infantry. Roll on the table. A 7 is a miss. So now we do the pursuit combat. We have a 2-to-1, but it's +2 because it's not prepared. However, the differential in the unit quality is also 2, so that negates. So it's just the 2-to-1 modifier. 2-to-1 modifier on the melee table is a -2. So it's a melee attack at -2. Not bad, not bad. Let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. They're crunching them. So they rolled a 4 down to a 2. It's reduced. And a QFT2. Their morale's a 7. Adding 2 to this die roll. 7, 8, 9. So they failed it by 2. Failed it by 2, so let's reduce them. Okay, and I think a failure by 2 on melee. And there's something special about a 2. If it fails by more than 2. It did not fail by more than 2. So, okay. That's for fire combats. Melee combats. If it fails by 2 or less, it must retreat 1 hex, or I can take an additional step loss. Well, I don't think I want to do that. Okay, and then they must advance because it's cavalry. Now we go to the, I think possibly I was supposed to do that pursuit attack later, but I did it then. Okay, so now Kellerman goes in. Kellerman has 13 to 10, so it's a 1-to-1. They're a 6, and they have a 10 in there. So it's -4. Kellerman makes it a -5. So that's pretty brutal. Okay. And someone told me the cavalry can be quite effective as a shock against unprepared units in the defense mode. So -5 on the melee table is a 0. Okay. I think there's a special result if there's a 0. Let me check. No, the result would have had to be negative. If it had been negative, it would have been a much worse result. It's still a pretty bad result. So we have a QFT2 result here. Okay, so, well, unfortunately this militia, is a 6 morale. So, adding 2 to this, oh, look at that, they stood. Very nice. So, but there was an R result. So they do flip. And there we go. So a pretty devastating attack, but due to the militia standing, the 4-6 Dutch militia stood their ground and prevented an even more shocking result for that. So that will end Kellerman's activation, and we'll proceed next time to the next British or Anglo-Allied activation. Just to record one final note, I rolled a 9 for the end of the turn. Also, I did roll a 4, which would be a lead or loss check on this chart. It's not focusing well, but that's only for the defender, so Kellerman was going to be okay. All right. I think this is not focusing well because I have bad lighting. Anyway, just final comments for the turn, and you can see the outcomes here. Quite damaged is that Netherlands division now. Okay, hi everybody. So this is what can happen when you're concentrating on videos and not playing the game. You see, what I didn't do is try to use the emergency defense option for these Netherlanders here when they could have when the cavalry was attacking. Now, there's a disadvantage to using the defense option. Emergency defense option is basically forming square, or preparing for a cavalry attack, whatever they used to do, but basically it was forming square. But, you know, if you fail basically a task check there, and you fail the quality roll, then the cavalry gets an extra -2. So if you got a low morale, it's actually maybe possibly detrimental. But when you have these high morale guys coming in at 9, maybe you should try. Anyway, I did not. Now, there was also awareness that I had this card over here, the Surprised by Cavalry card. Now, I also forgot to play this as the French. That's how unaware I was about this. So I've still got this. Now, it's not necessarily bad that I didn't play it, because as soon as I play it, it goes over into the discard pile for the Anglo-Allied side. So then, of course, when they start revving up Uxbridge's cavalry, the black units here, they will be able to get a hold of that card eventually. So there's something to be said for holding it back. However, with these weaker cavalry that I've got coming up, when I say weaker, their quality level is not as good. You can see that these 2nd Corps Cav only have a morale of 7. These 6th Corps Cav only have a morale of 7. So they're not going to be quite as good. So they might be beneficial for them to get a hold of that. But all that being said, I just put this reminder up here. As I continue to learn how to play this game, I need to remember certain things like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we've given an order to these Brunswickian units, Offerman. Now, Offerman doesn't have a great activation number, but they do have an order to try to reinforce what looks to be a collapsing Netherlander division or corps over here, as I don't think they're doing well. Now, we have a bit of a respite because Kellerman can't activate next time, so they'll have a turn to react while I get these guys in play. But to get them in play, I need to activate the guy. And with 5, he's activated. So I'm going to go ahead and do that move, and I'll come back to the video after that. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so we moved the BW Corps, or division, and as you can see, they were able to get to their destination. This is their destination area, the tip of this. So in backup position, as soon as they get there, I think they can go into defense orders. I'll have to check that out. Okay, so 1 activation done. Feeling a bit safer. Okay, so they won't be able to, so we move the red dot from Wellington to those guys. They can't activate twice in a row. Right, so I can't activate Kellerman again. So it's probably time to activate the second corps if at all possible. Here's Ray. He's the commander with a morale of 8. Get rid of these Anglo-Allied dice. Get the beautiful gold French dice. They also have some golden dice for the Prussians when they come in. All right, here we go. So Ray, trying to activate, rolls a 9, so he cannot activate. So I guess the next guy to try to activate would be Mont of the 6th Corps. Get him up in there. Now Mouton has a new goal to take that town. So Mouton is heading this direction. So that's where he needs to try to wind up. So let's see if Mouton can activate. And he is activated. So we'll come back after I move him. Okay, folks. So I didn't show it to you, but I did roll the end of the turn roll for activating those guys. And then I failed to activate, as you know, the 2nd Corps. But the 6th Corps was able to activate, and now they've moved up. You see they have quite a bit of artillery. Cavalry. Let's get these markers out of the way. So they have quite a bit of cavalry sweeping around to the other side here. So they'll be in a position to use that card. Like it turned out that, boom, they rolled a 10, and then the end of the turn roll. Oh, look at those like pieces of salt in there. I'm going to have to vacuum that out. That's unacceptable to have that in the pretty red felt. Okay, so that's the end of this second turn of the game now, as we're getting into position with a large force. Look at the scope of this. As you can see now, one of the things that did happen is that the Prussians come in over here, and it was actually the 6th Corps that tried to hold them off. They're over here now. So it might be something to think about as we move into the next turn. Next turn probably won't end as much. As you can see, the Prussians might start coming in. I think due to variable entry, they might actually start coming in this turn. So we'll see. But Napoleon needs to really get a beeline going here. We've had 2 short turns, and not a lot of action has occurred. But we'll see if we can roll that side, that flank. We've got another nice cavalry charge brewing over here. These guys just moved up. All right. I'm going to have to check and see. I don't want to move them into defensive position yet because they aren't there yet. They haven't made it up there far enough. So, should be interesting. Moving in to the 3rd turn of the game.